Good afternoon. Welcome in to the final regular season edition of the pregame call. PowerMizzou.com's weekly pregame show brought to you by Call and Gentry Law Group in Jefferson City, Missouri. We are 90 minutes from kickoff of Mizzou and Arkansas in Fayetteville at Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium. That will be on CBS. You can watch it there. Leading up to that, we hope that you will hang out here with us. I am Gabe DeArmond. Mitchell Forty going to join us in a little while as well, and we will take you right up to kickoff of the final regular season game of the year and what maybe is a rivalry. We'll talk about that a little bit. But first, want to make sure you guys know about our sponsor, Call and Gentry Law Group. Look, it is coming up on that time of year where everybody has a little time off, has a little time to enjoy themselves. Sometimes maybe that means you do some things you shouldn't have done. You get in trouble, whatever. Maybe you're just like a normal person who has actually everyday legal issues that you need taken care of, whether that is, contracts, business law, family law, anything like that. Whatever the case may be, Call and Gentry Law Group in Jefferson City can take care of you. You can see them online at callgentry.com, and you can schedule a consultation. You can call them at 573-691-4531. Again, 573-691-4531. When life is unfriendly, Call and Gentry, again, located in Jefferson City, Missouri. But you don't have to be in Jefferson City to use their services. They can take care of you just about anywhere. So, Mizzou, Arkansas, Razorbacks favored by somewhere around 2 touchdowns, a little bit more. Arkansas comes into this game 7-4. They have not lost a game to a team that wasn't ranked at the time. Now, Auburn is no longer ranked, but Auburn was ranked when it beat Arkansas. They have also lost to Alabama, obviously number 3 in the country, to Ole Miss, which is a top 10 team and just finished off a 10-2 season, and to Georgia, which is obviously the number 1 team in the country. Arkansas has had the toughest schedule in the country. Again, 7-4. Good season for the Razorbacks. No question about it. This is a big game for them from the standpoint that losing this 7-5, that would take it from a good season to like a good season, but a little bit hollow. Missouri, on the other hand, comes in 6-5, and I think this for the Tigers is the difference between a decent season and one that you feel pretty good about. At one point, Missouri sat 3-4. Since then, it has beaten Vanderbilt, Florida, and South Carolina, and the only loss to number 1 Georgia. If Missouri could finish this off, they'd be sitting 7-5. They would have the same SEC record as Arkansas, same overall record as Arkansas, same SEC record as Tennessee, probably the same SEC record as Auburn. And while the schedule hasn't been exactly the same as a couple of those teams, like, you would feel pretty good about things, right? 7-5, winning 4 of the last 5. You'd be going to a bowl game. We could talk a little bit about bowl destinations and all that. There's still way too much to decide to have any idea. But a number of possibilities. I mean, we can narrow it down to 4 or 5 probably for Missouri, but really a big game for both teams. And Pocket Watch points out that this can't be a rivalry because Arkansas doesn't have any rivals. So I actually was talking to a friend of mine about this morning, and he said, Missouri fans view this as a bigger rivalry than Arkansas fans do because Arkansas views its rivals as Texas and LSU. Well, here's the problem. Neither of those schools views Arkansas as its rival. I mean, Texas's rivals are A&M and Oklahoma. LSU's rivals are Alabama and Florida. And, yeah, I know they used to play Arkansas the day after Thanksgiving. Missouri's searching for a rivalry in this league. This is, honestly, to be one, Arkansas has to win some. I think Missouri's won 5 in a row. They won 50-48 last year. They lead the overall series 9-3. I want to say the last time that Arkansas won this game was when Gary Pinkel, his last game as Missouri's head coach down in Fayetteville. You guys are going to have to forgive me. I'm fighting a little bit of a cough, and so I may sound a little bit iffy from time to time here over the next 90 minutes, but we will do our best. But anyway, like, this isn't a heated rivalry yet, but there are enough storylines that it's pretty interesting. Obviously, Barry Odom is the defensive coordinator at Arkansas. I think you guys are familiar with his work. Eli Drinkwitz, whether he was offered the Arkansas job or not, I can't say, but Arkansas was interested in him as the head coach when it hired Sam Pittman and Missouri hired Drinkwitz. And ultimately, I think that has worked out really well for both of those schools. I think Sam Pittman, I wouldn't vote for him for the SEC Coach of the Year because I would vote for Lane Kiffin. But if Pittman wins this game, I think he's got an argument at 8-4 with 3 losses to top 10 teams, considering he took over a team that had lost 19 straight SEC games. He's done a heck of a job. There's no question. So I think that worked out. Adding to it, Trey Williams and Markel Utze transferred from Mizzou to Arkansas before this season. Dominique Johnson is a kid who was committed to Missouri and now plays for Arkansas, one of 4 Arkansas rushers with over 400 yards. So just a lot of interesting things here. Cam Cameron says, does the point spread seem a little big? It always seems like this game is pretty close. It seems big to me. Now, not like obnoxiously so, just a little bit bigger than I thought it would be. I thought it would be somewhere probably around like 9.5 or 10. And it opened, I want to say at 16, and it's somewhere around 14.5 right now. So is it a little bit big? Yeah, it's probably a little bit big. I want to take a look kind of at the history. And I agree, the feeling that I have is that it seems like this one always ends up being a little bit closer than we think. So here are the last few games. Last year, obviously, 50-48. Missouri won on the last-second field goal. The year before in Fayetteville, it was Barry Odom's last game, 24-14 Missouri. Missouri was blah, and Arkansas was terrible. 2018 was not a close game. It was 38-0 in Columbia. 2017 was 48-45 Missouri in Fayetteville. Again, that was not a very good Arkansas team. That was the Missouri team that won 6 in a row to end the regular season. It was okay. 2016, Missouri won 28-24, and that was actually a good Arkansas team. That was one of the early Brett Bielema teams, maybe the first or second one, I can't remember. The 38-0 game in 2018 was the one where Bielema was fired coming off the field. You got to go back to 2015 for the last one. Arkansas won, which was 28-3, the last game Gary Pinkel coached. But if you include the 2014 game, these teams have played 7 times as, conference mates in the SEC. The spreads in those games, 7, 25, 4, 3, 38, 10, and 2. So, 5 of the 7 have been decided by 10 points or less. 4 of the 7 have been one-score games. So, I agree overall with your point, Cam. It's generally a closer game than people think it's going to be. And I think I think that's kind of the case today. I think this is a closer game than most people are expecting. So want to say appreciate all you guys who are here live with me. We've been doing this all year, and definitely a lot of you guys have been here every week before the game. Certainly appreciate that. If we've got some new people, always like that too. Some of you guys might actually sometimes be working on game day and have this one off, whatever the case might be. Maybe you're tired of the in-laws, just wanted to go hang out on YouTube for a little while. But if you're here, ask you to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, you're going to get a push notification when we go live after the game for our post-game call-in show. And do want to give you guys a heads up on the post-game show today. It's going to be, we're going to do it, but at some point at 7:30, regardless of what's going on, I'm going to have to end it because I got to go over to Mizzou Arena to cover basketball versus Wichita State at 8 o'clock. So busy Mizzou day after Thanksgiving here. Football at 2:30, about an hour and 20 minutes, and then basketball going to be at 8 o'clock tonight at home. Mitchell Forty and I will have you covered on the football game. Then I'll be over at basketball while Mitch is finishing the rest of of the football stuff. Watch This points out that Tyler Beatty is feast or famine as a running back, especially against good defenses. I mean, that's semi-true. He has 5 100-yard games. 4 of those he's gone for under 200. Then the other 6 games he's been under 100. But you got to remember, I mean, Southeast Missouri State, he had 81 yards and sat in the second half. Georgia, he carried the ball 9 for 41 yards, and they sat him in the second half. Yes, there hasn't been a lot of in-between, right? He had 146 against Florida last week. That's his first game between 100 and 200. Everything else has been under 100 or over 200. But I think one of the misleading things or one of the misconceptions about this Arkansas team is that it's got a really good defense. I just don't really think that's the case. I mean, I want to compare numbers. Arkansas has given up 24.6 points a game. Missouri's given up 34.7. So Arkansas is obviously better in that regard. They're better than Missouri, right? But they're not great. They're giving up, 200 and I can't do the math right in my head, but something like 225 passing yards a game. They're giving up about 140 rushing yards a game. So 365 per game. I mean, they're playing well, 5.5 per play, but they gave up 559 yards passing to Alabama. Some teams have moved the ball on them. The defense, I don't think, is this just hugely stout outfit. I think Missouri should be able to score some points today, is what I'm saying. And I think Tyler Beatty should be able to be a factor in this game. He better be for Missouri, because if he's not, Missouri ain't winning. Because, again, I think Missouri's probably a 2-9 team without what Tyler Beatty has done this year. So, he's obviously going to be the key. Feast or famine is not incorrect, but I also think it undersells a little bit what Beatty has done this year. And I do just want to kind of roll through some of your guys' comments, and then we're going to talk with Andrew Hutchinson from Hogbeat. We're going to catch up with Mitchell Forty later. We'll look around the SEC, all that. But always just want to kind of catch up on what you guys are talking about at the beginning of this thing. Robert Connolly wants to see a consistent game from Manuel and Carles. Manuel flexes on a lot of tackles 7 yards down the field. Yeah, but that's been noticed. I'll say this. Missouri's defense has been better, certainly, the last few weeks. Now, Florida, I thought they played hard last week. I thought that game was more about Missouri than it was Florida. I didn't think Florida came in and rolled over. The week before, South Carolina, you want to say, hey, that's not a great offensive team, but the 2 weeks around the Missouri game, they beat Florida, they blew out Florida, and they beat Auburn. So, that win counts for something. And Missouri has done a good job giving up, they gave up 28 2 weeks ago, but that had a lot to do with the offense, too. They give up 23 in overtime last week to Florida. You will take that all day long. If Missouri could manage to give up 23 points a game, I think that Missouri fans would take their chances. Michael Kaiser asking who votes for Coach of the Year in reference to something I said at the beginning. There's two. I think there's I think the other coaches vote for one, and then the media votes for one too. Not all media, there's a select number of voters who vote for it. Again, I said I'd probably go Lane Kiffin first. Kirby Smart would be in the discussion because they're a great team. I'd vote Sam Pittman and Josh Heupel, probably. Those are the 4 guys that have any sort of a chance. But I would vote Kiffin. I mean, it's the first 10-win regular season in Ole Miss history, which is kind of crazy, right? Ole Miss has never won 10 in the regular season. I want to shout out to Pocket Watch for the super chat. We always appreciate those. Never ask for them, but always appreciate them. Cam asking if a Caleb Evans is playing today. We don't know yet. And full disclosure, Mitchell Forty is not in Fayetteville, so we'll see. The one thing it does seem we can confirm is that Daniel Parker Jr. is not playing. He tweeted 20 minutes ago, hey, bring back Nico Hay and Messiah Swinson with a win. So we're assuming he didn't make the trip. He was supposed to speak to the media on Tuesday and did not. Media was told he was sick. And then Wednesday he was on the injury report as questionable. We do not believe Parker is playing. That's the only one we really know. Hiron White, kind of up in the air. Certainly expect Connor Bazelak to play at this point. Caleb Evans, we don't know for sure, but the way Eli Drinkwitz talked last week, I think he'll play. Ish Burdine won't. Sean Robinson won't. Allie Green, we don't really know. So cornerback, certainly, a big question mark for Missouri. Jared says, I'll believe it when I see it. Scoring points with Bazelak at the helm, scored 16 in regulation against a terrible Florida defense. That's fair. Missouri has not lit things up on offense, right? I'm not saying Missouri's going to score 40. I'm just saying I think they'd have a chance at 30, which is what I think it takes to win this game, probably is the low 30s. So, but, hey, fair on Missouri's offense hadn't been great. Connor Bazelak certainly has been up and down. I think deserves credit for doing what needed to be done against Florida, but I understand that the fan base still isn't super excited about him. Hot Shoulders wants details about DJ Jackson. Don't remember seeing him on the recruiting list. Yeah, he was a kid that was not super heralded when Missouri signed him. He is a true freshman this year, and he's a kid out of, I believe he's out of Texas. Hang on, I'm gonna have to look him up. Red Oak, Texas. His name in our database was Darius Jackson, so that's why you may not recognize DJ Jackson, but David Gibbs was pretty big in signing him. His other offers were Arkansas State, Dartmouth, Jackson State, Kansas State, Texas State, and Washington State. So just not a kid who was highly sought after, but came in as a true freshman, and man, he looked good last week. And even Eli Drinkwitz said I didn't know he was going to play that well, stepping in for a Caleb Evans. So that gives Missouri a little bit more depth and something else to feel pretty good about. I think today will mostly be Chris Abrams-Drain having the responsibility on Treylon Burks, who is Arkansas's leading receiver by like a mile. He has like 53 catches, and I think nobody else has 20. But he lines up in the slot a lot. That's where Chris Abrams-Drain is going to line up a lot. So I think that's where I think he's the guy who will mostly draw the responsibility. I think Jackson will be more on the outside guys, but definitely got to feel really good about Darius Jackson and the way he played last week. Stewart says, got to win the turnover battle today by 2 or greater. That's probably true. Certainly can't lose it because this is an explosive Arkansas offense. KJ Jefferson, they can run the heck out of the ball. Treylon Burks might be the best receiver in the SEC. So they're going to put up points. And I won't say Missouri has to win the turnover battle by 2 or more, but they certainly can't lose it. They're going to have to at least be even. I don't think there's any question about that. Justin says, strange how Mizzou fans are complaining about the offense at this point in the season because it seems so limited, but it's in part because Drink has renewed confidence in the defense. And I think that's worth pointing out. We even asked him about this, and he said in the Florida game he called plays differently because they were playing good defense, and he had a belief that his defense was going to keep them in the game. So he backed off a little bit and was a little more conservative and made sure they protected the ball on offense. Now, again, I'm not saying Missouri doesn't have offensive problems. Missouri's got some offensive problems, but I do think that is a part of it. Davin's asking if Parker got hurt on the 2-point conversion dog pile. We don't know. Again, we were told on Tuesday it was illness, so I would assume it's some sort of, whether it's flu or whatever. We would think that's what it is, but we don't know for sure. Eric Wilper says that Bazelak can definitely play better, but the throw on the 2-point conversion was ridiculous. It was his third and final read. He was falling backwards with a defender in his face. Yeah, both those things can be true, right? He needs to play better. He can play better, needs to play better. But also you got to tip your cap to making the play on the biggest snap of the season. He did what had to be done. And fans want to say, well, yeah, we won with Bazelak at quarterback, but we would have won easier with somebody else at quarterback. Well, that's a fine thing to say because literally nobody can prove you wrong. There's no way to say whether that is true or not, right? So I understand the frustration and the desire for a new quarterback, but look, guys, it ain't happening. Bazelak's the guy, and it's pretty obvious. He's going to be the guy the last 2 games of this year, assuming he's healthy, and then we'll see if anything changes in spring football. I don't know if it will or not, but he's your guy for the rest of the regular season. So, again, game on CBS, a little over an hour away from kickoff now. And what we always do on this show, we always like to give you guys some insight into the opposing team. And we do that by talking to somebody who knows a heck of a lot more about them than I do. This week, we recorded this a little bit early because it was obviously Thanksgiving week. On Tuesday, talked with Andrew Hutchinson from hogbeat.com. He covers Arkansas for the Rivals.com network. I want to play that conversation for you guys here in a minute. We'll come back, look at some numbers, look around the SEC, catch up with Mitchell Forty. But for now, here's our chat with Hutch. Any good or not, but just tell him anyway. So as promised, we're going to bring in now Andrew Hutchinson. He is the managing editor over at hogbeat.com. Andrew, I don't know if that's technically your title. I think that's what I remember you saying, so that's what I used. But if it's something more impressive, please let us know.
No, just managing editor. That works for me.
I mean, I didn't mean to say that wasn't impressive. It's obviously an impressive title. But, okay, so Missouri, Arkansas on Friday afternoon. Have they started to build the Sam Pittman statue in Fayetteville yet, or are they going to wait a couple more weeks to do so?
I think they're going to wait a couple of weeks to do so. Now, had they pulled off the upset this past Saturday in Tuscaloosa, then it would probably be ready to go for this Friday's game. But yes, they are very happy with Sam Pittman. He is, I think, far exceeded even the most optimistic expectations in 2 years. So they are very fond of Sam Pittman, and break here or there, Arkansas could legitimately be looking at a 10-win season. But even as is, 8 wins in the regular season, that's something Arkansas hasn't done in a decade.
That's kind of crazy when you put it that way. But I don't know if people forget how down Arkansas was, or if it's just, wow, the speed with which he turned it around. I mean, the pessimists, and by that I mean the people on my message board who maybe don't root for Arkansas to be great, will say he was left a lot of talent and Chad Morris was really that bad. But the optimist, I assume, will say, man, he's done a phenomenal job here. And I think he has. I don't think that should be taken away. But, how much did getting all these seniors back, I think they brought back as many guys as anybody in the country from last year, how much has that helped him maybe bridge the gap this year to now being able to get some of his own guys in, probably starting next season?
Oh, it's been absolutely vital. I mean, you look at just the linebackers. I mean, your 2 starters are super seniors, as Sam Pittman calls them. Grant Morgan, he was an All-American last year. Hayden Henry, he's been around the block a time or two, and he's playing the best ball of his career. So you've got that. You've got a couple of super seniors on the offensive line. Your left tackle is a super senior. A couple of your starting wide receivers are super seniors. So yeah, you can't understate the importance of those guys. Without those guys, Arkansas would not be a top 25 team as we're sitting here talking today. I mean, that's the facts. And I think they're hoping to get a couple of super seniors back again next year to kind of help kind of steady the ship as well. But the guys they got back this year were incredibly important. And I think those linebackers, I mentioned them once, I'll mention them again, Grant Morgan and Hayden Henry. Without those guys, I don't think Arkansas would be a bowl team. I'm pretty confident in saying that.
We'll get into the specific matchups more here in a minute, but just Eli Drinkwitz said on Tuesday that Pittman was the perfect guy at the perfect time for this Arkansas program. And look, let's be honest. When the hire was made, outside of Fayetteville, the reaction was, I don't even really want to say mixed. It was kind of, what are they doing here? Now, it proves, first of all, obviously, that you can't judge a hire on day one. Nobody knows. I mean, a few years ago, Scott Frost was going to bring Nebraska back to glory, and then a couple years ago, Sam Pittman was a terrible hire, and it's obviously been exactly the opposite. But has it surprised you, just covering this program day to day, how quickly he's gotten it going, and really how's he done it?
Well, 2 years ago, Arkansas lost to San Jose State, and they were blown out by Western Kentucky. They were 2-10 for a second straight year, and they had lost, I think, 19 SEC games in a row. So to say that I expected them to be a top 25 team in year two would just be absolutely a lie. I mean, even if I had put on the rosiest of rose-colored glasses, I don't think I could have predicted that. So Sam Pittman has definitely surprised me. When he got hired, as you said, everyone outside of Arkansas probably thought it was a horrible hire. And like, what are you doing hiring a career offensive line coach? He's never been an offensive coordinator or anything. What are you doing? The people in Arkansas remembered what he did as an offensive line coach at Arkansas. That, for 3 years, he built Arkansas into having one of the best offensive lines in the country. And they remember his recruiting prowess. And so I think there was some optimism there. I was, maybe a little bit optimistic, like, hey, this guy can maybe be the guy that gets Arkansas just back to respectability, where they're not getting blown out by North Texas and Western Kentucky like they did in back-to-back years and losing every game in SEC play. Like, you've got to get to where you can, beat the SEC teams you're supposed to beat, not just – you're not going to be competitive against the likes of like Alabama or things like that, but – you should be able to beat the Mississippis. You should be able to beat Missouri every now and then. And that just wasn't happening. So I think that that's kind of what I expected. And I thought maybe the next guy who took over would be the guy that maybe was able to take, build on that and take it to the next level. But I think Sam Pittman's kind of skipped that step and said, hey, I'm going to take it to the next level myself. And to have the season they've had this year is just truly remarkable. And, had it not been for what Kirby Smart's doing over there in Georgia, I would say Sam Pittman has an excellent case to be the SEC Coach of the Year.
I mean, Drinkwitz said he'd vote for him. I think if he wins on Saturday, I think he's got a shot, but I think the winner of the Egg Bowl on Friday, I guess they play, but the winner of the Egg Bowl's got a shot too. So let's start on the defensive side of the ball. For obvious reasons, that's the side that Missouri fans are somewhat interested down there. And tell me what this Arkansas defense is, because just like looking at scores week to week and looking at some of the box scores, it looks to me like either, holy cow, they put on a clinic and played great defense, or, oh my God, they got absolutely shredded. Like, there doesn't really seem to be an in-between, and I don't want, like, I'm not speaking ill of Barry Odom and his defense for giving up 700 yards to Alabama. It's going to happen. For Matt Corral scoring 52 points, sometimes it's going to happen, but it just doesn't, it seems like it's either great or, oh man, this was a rough day, and there's not really any in-between.
No, there really isn't, because the first 4 weeks of the season, it was a top 10 unit in college football. I mean, I was talking about how it was incredible and that Barry Odom should be the Broyles Award winner and things like that, but it did kind of fall off. I mean, playing at Georgia and then playing Ole Miss's offense, that'll kind of do it to you. But they played incredible against LSU. They've been opportunistic when it comes to turnovers, and as you know, that's probably not a sustainable way of living on defense. You're not going to be able to get those all the time, but that's been a key. And plus, they play this primarily. They like to go multiple, and that's what they like to say. But primarily, they have a 3-man front. They rush 3 and they drop 8. And when you play against the likes of Matt Corral, Bryce Young, and even Bo Nix, those accurate quarterbacks that are veteran, they're going to pick you apart. Now, when you run into somebody who maybe isn't as good of a decision maker, we saw, Will Rogers struggle a little bit. The quarterbacks at LSU struggled. Garrett Nussmeier, it was like his first real, significant playing time for LSU. Those kind of guys struggled. Maybe Connor Bazelak fits that kind of mold. He has thrown, some interceptions this year. So that's kind of what I'm anxious to see how it plays out, because it's been very, as you said, hot and cold on that side of the ball this year.
A lot of the offenses they play, obviously, like you said, are these kind of spread, high-flying passing offenses. Missouri doesn't throw the ball nearly as well as a lot of those teams, but they have the leading rusher in the SEC, and that's the guy they're going to go through. So do you see Odom kind of sticking with that same three-man front scheme, or does he change it when he knows the other team, basically everything goes through the running game and the running back?
You know, early in the season, Arkansas basically the first 4 games they went 4-man front, 3-man front, 4-man front, 3-man front, and incredibly, those 3-man front games were against Texas and Bijan Robinson, and they shut him down in just a fantastic game. And then Texas A&M, and they shut down that rushing attack. I think their running back, whose name escapes me at the moment, had a like 70-yard touchdown run. But other than that, he had like 30 yards or something like that. So they've had success stopping the run with a 3-man front. It takes really, really good play by the linebackers. But they've also been gashed sometimes, a few times as well. So a guy like Tyler Beatty, I would probably say they'd be better off running a 4-man front. But again, I'm not the one making 1 point whatever $1 million it is that Barry Odom's making. I'm sure he'll get something figured out. But I know Arkansas fans, if they start out in that 3-man front and Tyler Beatty rips off a 15-yard run on the first play of the game, I guarantee you I know what our message board is going to be looking like at that moment.
Right. A couple other familiar names. Look, everybody saw Trey Williams kind of have the breakout day on national TV. What have he and Markel Utze brought to that unit this year? Because I didn't think it was – I didn't think either one was a huge loss for Missouri, but then, hey, they've played pretty well, as Missouri took about 2 months to figure out how to play competent defense. So I will raise my hand and say I was wrong on that one.
Yeah, both those guys have been steady starters for Arkansas. You know, Markel, he missed a couple of games with an injury, but he's been back since the bye week. So I guess 3 straight games he started. Definitely Trey Williams has been the most impactful. He has been the pass rusher Arkansas needed. He hasn't been super consistent. You know, I mean, you mentioned the game where he kind of broke out on national TV. That was against Texas A&M. I mean, he picked on that poor left tackle for the Aggies all game long and was dominant. And I think that kind of spurred some conversation like, man, this guy could be, you know, a mid-round draft pick in next spring's draft. Then he disappeared for 3 weeks. Like, you look at the Pro Football Focus data, and he had like hardly any zero pressures, like literally zero.
Can I interject for a minute and just say, welcome to the Trey Williams experience? I've watched the kid. He played high school football with my son. Every game you go, he'll have a game that you go, oh my God, this kid is an NFL player, and then you'll go, oh, I kind of forgot that dude was on the team, and that's been the issue, is the consistency.
Yeah, and that's definitely what Arkansas has experienced, and I think maybe a little bit was he got a little banged up, and he wasn't fully healthy. And then I think the open date that Arkansas had was really good for him, and he's had some good moments, you know, since then. He's gotten some pressures. I think he had a 2-sack game against, I want to say, Mississippi State or one of those teams. He's up to 6 sacks this year. You know, Markel, he's been out there. He hasn't really been super productive, but they clearly like what he brings to the table because he's continuing to start and play a lot of snaps. You know, he'll play the defensive end spot, the 3-man front, or he'll play inside in the 4-man front. So they like his versatility. But he hasn't been nearly as productive as, say, John Ridgway, who's another transfer defensive lineman Arkansas brought in from Illinois State, the FCS ranks. You know, he hasn't had a ton of production, but I feel like he's been more productive than Markel, just, you know, being a really solid, you know, piece there in the middle of the defensive line and you know, steadily pushing the pocket and things like that. But yeah, I mean, the transfer portal, without that, you know, I talk about, you know, the safety or the linebackers who came back as super seniors. They were incredibly important, and so were the 3 transfer defensive linemen, including Trey and Markel from Missouri. Incredibly important for the success of this defense.
We'll flip over to offense in just a minute. One quick last one, and I'm not asking you to make a prediction, just kind of what the feeling is down there as far as if Barry Odom's back for another year in Fayetteville, or if this is maybe the offseason that he gets another shot to be a head coach.
Yeah, I think that's the question that a lot of people are asking. I don't know. I mean, I could see him. They're going to be losing the super seniors at linebacker. They're probably going to be losing Jalen Catalon, who's out with this season-ending injury, and they're losing those those transfer defensive linemen that all came in that have played a ton of snaps. So they're going to be losing a lot of talent. So my gut says that if a good opportunity comes along, whether it be a head coaching job or something, I could see him taking it just because you're probably not going to look as sexy of a hire next off season because the defense is probably going to take a step back.
So flip over to the other side of the ball. 12 months ago, Felipe Franks can't play, and Arkansas comes in here playing the backup quarterback, and Missouri fans are thinking, okay, maybe that's a good thing, and then watch the game unfold and go, well, we're making another backup quarterback look like Peyton Manning, right? And well, what we didn't know at the time was KJ Jefferson's a damn good quarterback, man. I mean, that was kind of I mean, people had heard of him, but I don't think anybody knew what to expect out of him that day. And then it really springboarded him to a heck of a season.
Yeah, I tweeted as soon as that news came out that KJ Jefferson was going to start. I can't remember exactly what I tweeted, but it was something along the lines of, "Uh-oh, this ain't good for Arkansas," because we don't get to see a lot of practice, as you know, but we saw enough to where I was like, okay, so KJ, that's why they brought in Felipe, is because he wasn't going to be ready as a redshirt freshman, and he struggled with accuracy, things like that, and you could tell he had the raw physical talents. He just wasn't ready to play, and lo and behold, he goes out there against Missouri. I know that they weren't the 85 Bears or anything last year, but to do what he did on the road against an SEC team and do what he did, down the stretch, leading that, go ahead drive and throwing a touchdown pass and a 2-point conversion with less than a minute left to take the lead. That was huge. And I think that really gave the coaching staff confidence, like, hey, this is our guy next year. And we don't need to go out and land another Felipe Franks in the transfer portal because we've got our guy. And there was a little bit of apprehension. I've said before the season, I said Arkansas is going to be as good as KJ Jefferson is. And sure enough, he has been damn good, as you said. And I think Kendall Briles during fall camp had predicted or said that their target completion percentage for him was 65%. And the general consensus amongst the media, we left that press conference and we said, there is no chance in hell they complete 65% of the passes with KJ. His accuracy just wasn't there. He's got an incredible deep ball and he's dangerous with his legs, but the accuracy was just not there. And he starts out the first half of the Rice game in the opener, Rice, not exactly a great team. And he goes like 4 of 11 in the first half. And people are calling for him to be benched. He's terrible. Bring in the backup because he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But they stuck with him, and he is completing 76% of his passes in November against Mississippi State, LSU, and Alabama. So pretty good defenses. And he has been playing incredible. He's been incredible in late game situations like we saw up in Columbia last year. He led a touchdown drive that ended literally as time expired against Ole Miss. Didn't get the 2-point conversion, so it was a loss. Then he led the game-winning drive against Mississippi State, where Arkansas scored the touchdown with like 21 seconds left, and was just phenomenal, incredibly poised, 2-minute drill, and he has been incredible. And I think he should be an all-SEC kind of guy going into next year, and I think you can make a case he's top 3 or 4 in the SEC this year.
Yeah, for sure. His main target, the guy everybody knows from Arkansas's offense, is Treylon Burks. So obviously he's good, but how important is? I mean, are there enough other guys that if you find a way to kind of shut Burks down, where else do they go?
Yeah, that's been the question that they've been trying to figure out all year, because it has really been Treylon Burks. I mean, we saw it last year in the Missouri game. He and KJ, they're really tight. They were roommates as freshmen. They lived together since then, and he came in the same recruiting class. So they're really, really tight, have a great connection. Who the other receiver is, it's been different guys in different weeks. There for a stretch early in the season, it was a Tyson Morris. He's one of those super seniors, former walk-on, who's been, extremely productive for a guy who wasn't a scholarship player until a couple of years ago. Warren Thompson is probably the guy that they would like to be the number 2 guy. He's a transfer from Florida State, former top 100 recruit, heralded guy. He struggled with some drops. I want to say it was against UAPB of all teams. He dropped like legitimately 3 passes in the end zone, and it was a rough game for him. And he's had some good moments. He made a nice catch against Alabama, so he's been a guy. And then that's really about it. I mean, they've got Davion Warren, another super senior, but he hasn't really done much. You've got a stud freshman in Ketron Jackson, but he's only caught 3 passes all year. You've got some tight ends. Trey Knox is a wide receiver turn tight end, and he's had some really good moments as he's kind of learned the tight end position. Blake Kern has struggled with some drops along the way, but made a couple of really nice catches against Alabama. He's a former walk-on super senior. So really, it's Treylon Burks, and then it's the running game that I'm sure we're going to talk about that Arkansas is going to lean on.
Yeah, I mean, Arkansas has 4 guys that have run for 475 yards or more, including KJ Jefferson. What the guy I wanted to ask you about there, it apparently is like a rule in this game now that Arkansas has a running back who at one time was committed to Missouri, and then ends up running pretty well in Fayetteville. But I think I'd actually forgotten until I saw a tweet about it that Dominique Johnson was at one point committed to Missouri. Eli Drinkwitz came in and. It depends on what side of what story you believe, but whatever. The kid ends up at Arkansas, so I've got to imagine he's a guy that this one's probably going to mean a little bit too.
Yeah, I actually asked Sam Pittman that question on Monday and said, the way his recruitment unfolded, because there was some drama and there were some hard feelings on Dominique's side, the way it all happened. And I asked if this game was going to mean extra to him, and Sam Pittman kind of said, no, he's just out there trying to play his best ball, which is coach speak for, yeah, he wants to go out there and kick their butt, in my opinion. I think he's going to be fired up and ready to go. And, in Missouri's defense and in Eli Drinkwitz's defense, no one here at Arkansas, even the coaches during fall camp, thought Dominique Johnson was going to be a contributor at running back. They actually moved him to tight ends at one point during fall camp, then had to move him back to running back just because there were some other injuries. And since then, he has been a mainstay. The last couple of weeks, he hasn't ran it as well, but before that, he was first or second in the SEC in rushing yards per attempt and was incredibly productive. I think he had a 100-yard game against Mississippi State the first time they actually gave him kind of a workhorse load. And, he got a little banged up against Alabama. He was at practice on Monday. So I expect him to play, but I don't know if he's going to be 100%. But I would say as long as that guy can walk and he's breathing, he's going to find his way out on the field against Missouri.
Just last thing, I mean, how big is this one for Arkansas? And if they're going to win, what's the main reason they did it?
Yeah, I think if they win, the main reason they did it is because they continue being incredibly good on offense. I think that's the strength of this team. KJ Jefferson and Treylon Burks are probably going to have big games. Treylon's probably not 100%. I don't know if he's been 100% all year, which is kind of scary considering how good he's been. But he got banged up, took some big-time hits against Alabama. But if those guys are healthy and then the defense just creates a turnover or two, then I think Arkansas is going to be just fine and be able to win. This is a game you look at it. Arkansas, in my opinion, is clearly the better team on paper, but that doesn't seem to have mattered against Missouri the last several years. I mean, it's like 5 in a row Missouri's won, and there have been games in there that Arkansas probably should have won. I mean, last year gave up the field goal as time expired, and there was the 24-7 halftime lead they blew back in, I want to say 2016. So this is kind of a funky series for Arkansas, but I think they feel good about their chances, and especially if they can get your typical performances from those guys, and if they can get the run game going like some teams have done against Missouri, then I think they're going to be just fine and should be able to put up a lot of points. It's just going to be a matter of can the defense prevent them from scoring points as well.
All right, so there you have kind of the inside scoop on the Razorbacks from Andrew Hutchinson. Does a good job over at hogbeat.com of covering the Razorbacks. And I don't think this is going to be a shootout because I don't if it is, I think it's bad news for Missouri because Missouri's not equipped to win a shootout, honestly. But again, I do think this is a game that it's going to take. You're going to have to be in the 30s to win it. The strength, relatively, of both of these teams has been the offense, and we're going to look at them kind of side by side here. Oddly, they both run the exact same number of plays on the season. They both run 771 offensive plays this season. Arkansas is averaging 21.5 yards more per game. Missouri throws it better. Arkansas runs it better. Both teams do a really good job taking care of the football. I think it's noteworthy that Missouri has lost only one fumble all year. That was Mookie Cooper in the South Carolina game. So that means their running back, and I'm not going to say his name because I'm not going to be blamed for jinxing him, but their running back, who is one of the country's leading rushers this season, hadn't put the ball on the ground all year, which is a pretty, maybe more impressive than any stat that he has had so far this season. Again, the Arkansas passing game it's decent, right? I mean, Treylon Burks is special. KJ Jefferson throws a nice deep ball, as Missouri found out last year. So they can throw the football, but I still think the approach has to be for Missouri what it has been the last 2 weeks, which is just absolutely sell out to stop the run. Put everything you can on stopping the run and then force the opposition to beat you through the air. Georgia could do it. South Carolina and Florida couldn't do it. So it'll be interesting to see if that's kind of the same approach from Missouri. Want to take a look real quick before we have Mitchell Forty join us, just kind of around the rest of the SEC. So we're starting in the West. If Arkansas wins this game, and that Mississippi State record should actually be 4-4 with the loss to Ole Miss last night. So if Arkansas wins this game, they've got a shot because they beat Mississippi State. They would finish either third or fourth in the West. Technically, would be tied with Mississippi State, and then A&M plays LSU. If LSU were to win that game and Arkansas were to win today, then that would actually put Arkansas third in the West, which would be pretty impressive. Now, flip side, they can finish as low as sixth. If they end up 3-5, regardless of what Auburn does, they're sixth in the West. So that's big swing there. Logjam in the middle of the SEC West. No logjam at the top. Alabama, if it beats Auburn, is in the SEC title game against Georgia. Actually, that's not true. Alabama's in anyway because they beat Ole Miss. So Alabama's already in. Ole Miss could technically share the division title, but we all know, look, if you win the division title, you're playing in the SEC championship game. If you're not in that game, you shouldn't go around claiming you won things you didn't win. That's always been my feeling. Over in the East, obviously Georgia ran the table, won the division by 3 games. The logjam here is 3-4-5. South Carolina's already done. Mizzou beat South Carolina, so did Tennessee. So South Carolina is going to finish 5th. Missouri is going to finish 4th unless Vanderbilt beats Tennessee and Missouri beats Arkansas. Vanderbilt is not beating Tennessee. So Tennessee's going to finish 3rd in this division. Mizzou 4th, South Carolina 5th, Florida 6th. Obviously, Florida, the surprise there, at least relative to preseason expectations. Everything else, I mean, Tennessee, Mizzou, South Carolina, probably a little bit of a positive surprise. But everything else, I think, kind of went the way a lot of people would have expected it to go. I think I picked Missouri 3rd in the East before the season, but 4th wouldn't have shocked me. Obviously, this one would be big because if they win it, that's 4-4, and I do think a 500 record in the league and what would be a winning record overall would be pretty big. Let's take a quick look at the other games in the SEC. Ole Miss won the Egg Bowl last night. Georgia Tech in an excellent rivalry name game tomorrow. It's called Good Old Fashioned Hate. At least it used to be. I don't know what they're allowed to call it now. It's going to be a terrible game. Georgia's favored by 37. Florida State's at Florida. Again, terrible game. Nobody cares, but somebody can qualify for the Mayo Bowl or something similar. Vanderbilt at Tennessee, terrible game. A&M at LSU, probably a terrible game. Clemson at South Carolina, probably a terrible game. And Kentucky at Louisville, could be an okay game. But honestly, probably also a terrible game. So all in all, terrible week in the Southeastern Conference. I, for some reason, did not put Auburn, Alabama on there. That's at 2:30. That's the Iron Bowl. Also, though, a terrible game. So now we're going to bring in Mitchell Forty into the picture and hang out with him for a little bit leading up to this 2:30 kickoff. And Mitch, as you just heard, as I was talking through it, awful week in the Southeastern Conference. Not much to get excited about, I guess, except for like whatever team you particularly care about is the only thing to get excited about.
Yeah, the team of fans of every particular team will have a game they care about because it's rivalry week, and even if that game doesn't necessarily mean anything in the big picture, it means a lot to beat your rival. So there's that. It'll be fun. I actually, I'm curious to see what happens in Auburn, Alabama. I think probably Alabama will win by a good bit, but I'm not sure of it because they've kind of crept by a few opponents here. And of course, for me, Kentucky Louisville is always good TV. Two teams that very, very much dislike each other. And I think it should be a pretty evenly matched game. So yeah, I don't know. It's I'm not going to complain. I get a Saturday mostly off tomorrow to watch football. I will take full advantage.
Yeah, I don't know if Kentucky Louisville will be a good game or good TV, but it will be good Twitter. I know that much. Just following the people that cover each respective team. So you said it's rivalry week. It might be more rivalry week. Like, where do you think this Missouri-Arkansas thing stands?
I really think that, we're getting closer, right? It's never going to be the level of Mizzou, KU, and, Arkansas probably has a couple teams that they certainly like less than Missouri. But, we have some actual juice now. And it might go away when, the personnel, there's not as much familiarity, kind of like Mizzou and Arkansas in basketball. When Mike Anderson was there, it was a little more of a rivalry than it is now. But, you have Barry Odom on the other sideline. You have Michael Shearer on the other sideline. You have Trey Williams and Markel Utze playing for Arkansas. You got Eli Drinkwitz, who's from Arkansas and, very happy to run his mouth from time to time, although he didn't this week. But he's thrown some jabs their way before. So I think that it's definitely not, like I said, the level of Mizzou KU, but it doesn't feel as forced as it did for the first few years. It feels like a game that actually means something to either side to try to get some bragging rights.
Feels like a game that should be played for a trophy that's 4.5 feet tall and weighs 180 pounds, as I learned from you retweeting that today.
I was very impressed. Yeah, I will say the trophy still does it's not quite important enough for the trophy of that magnitude.
And good rivalries aren't called the Battle Line rivalry presented by Shelter Insurance. They get rid of. Yeah. I get it, make some money on it. That's fine, but we can't call it that. I agree. It's not as forced as it was, but it was funny. At the beginning of the show, I've talked to somebody who knows some Arkansas people today, and they told him yeah, Missouri's not our rival. Texas and LSU are our rivals. Well, that's cool, but Texas and LSU don't view Arkansas as rivals. So
right.
And the funny thing is the fan base that less wants to call this a rivalry is the one that hasn't won it in 5 years. Arkansas has to win this thing for it to be a rivalry too.
That is a good point. Yeah, it's been very one-sided over the past few years. So I don't know. We'll see if that changes today. If it does, I predict that some Arkansas fans might be a little more excited about the Battle Line Trophy than they were coming into today.
No question. Certainly, Arkansas should win this one, right? And to be fair, over the last 5 years, there's probably only one of those years that Arkansas should have won the game. They had a 24-7 lead and blew it in Barry Odom's first year when Missouri was playing for absolutely nothing. But other than that, Missouri has been the better team. I think it's fair to say Arkansas is the better team here. I was saying earlier, don't you have to do the same thing that you've done the last 2 or 3 weeks if you're Missouri and just say, whatever we do, we're not letting them beat us by running the football. And if they can beat us throwing it, fine. But we are selling out everything to stop the run because that's the better part of this Arkansas team.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. Stopping the run is always going to be priority number one for this defense because if they go back to looking like they did for the first, 8-9 weeks or whatever, it's going to be a long day. We saw that's just not a winnable recipe. And Arkansas does run the ball well. I think they're 13th nationally in rushing or something like that, well over 200 yards a game. But you can't totally sell out on the run. You kind of can. I think I wouldn't be, surprised if we see some more kind of cover zero like they were talking about last week. But I think you have to be mindful of Treylon Burks is where I'm kind of going with this, because he's really, really good. He torched Mizzou last year, 206 yards and a touchdown. He had like 180 and a touchdown last week against Alabama. He is good enough to beat you by himself. And I think if you try to man up against him, leave Chris Abrams-Strain or whoever it is on an island all day, that's scary to me. So we'll see. I think Arkansas is the better team as well, but I also do kind of feel like the number is too big. And I don't know what it is right now. Last I checked, it was 14.5 in favor of Arkansas. And you and I are both kind of in agreement. It kind of feels like a one-score game. Missouri's been playing better. Arkansas has certainly beaten some good teams, but like almost all of their wins have been fairly close, at least since they blew out Texas and Texas A&M. So I have a sense that this feels like a one-score game to me.
I think, and look, since Missouri's playing basketball later tonight too, this is appropriate. If I'm Eli Drinkwitz, I'm going with the box and one. Just put the one guy on Burks and zone everything else. The Arkansas defense, I don't know, it's fine. They're right, like it's better than Missouri's, but it's not great. It's been opportunistic. But by the same token, and we aren't having the same quarterback conversation that we've had necessarily, because we know who's starting this game. But, and I think this is kind of the interesting, and I don't know if interesting is the right word, but Case brings up, I went back and watched the LSU game from last year. What happened to that version of Connor Bazelak? And I would say, first of all, like, he quit playing LSU secondary, which was very helpful. But also, that's a pretty good question, because we all expected, it's just a natural thing that you think you're going to see a better version the next year, and we have not seen the better version.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question for Missouri this game is, if they're going to win, Connor Bazelak, I think, has to go out and actually like make the plays to win. I don't think they're going to get by like they have the last couple of weeks with him. He made a big play, obviously, in the 2-point conversion play against Florida. But for the most part, the past 2 weeks, the recipe was, defense carries the team. Tyler Beatty does enough, and Bazelak just kind of, sort of does enough. Although against South Carolina, he didn't actually. He got pulled, but they win somewhat in spite of him. I think that can't work today, because I think Arkansas is going to score some points. And Barry Odom, I know that Mizzou fans don't want to give him credit, but he's a smart enough defensive coordinator to find a way to make it harder for Tyler Beatty to beat that team. I mean, that is going to be the game plan. It was Florida's game plan very clearly. And, Tyler Beatty's a good player, and he gets better as the game goes on, and he might still, break off some runs and such. But I have to think that if Missouri's going to have a chance to win this game, it's going to be because Connor Bazelak makes some throws to put them in position to win. As for the question about the LSU thing, yeah, I think the big thing there is he's not playing against Bo Pelini's secondary every week. That helped a lot.
Yeah, and I think the other way Missouri could win this game is if Beatty does break off like 2 60-yarders. And look, you say probably not. I mean, probably not, but I don't know. He's done it quite a few times this year. Stewart brings up, I think, a good point that KJ Jefferson running the ball could be a real issue. He has more carries than anybody on Arkansas's team, which is a little bit crazy. But they have, I don't think they have a guy over 500 rushing yards, but they have 4 over 400. They may, I know they don't have anybody over 600, so it's just kind of trotting out whoever they feel like to average 5.5 yards a carry.
Yeah, it's actually really similar to Florida in that regard, where they rotate like 3 different backs and have a rushing quarterback. So, yeah, that'll be something to watch. I mean, Mizzou handled Florida's rushing attack really well last week, for the most part contained Emory Jones. So, I have no reason to doubt they can do that again. But, yes, doing so would be very important.
Then Cam Cameron asks, going back to Tyler Beatty, what are the odds this is his last game in a Mizzou uniform? I mean, you'd have to think better than 50%, right? But by the same token, I don't know. Tyler kind of strikes me as a guy who might play a bowl game. Like, he wouldn't have to, but he's not a first-round pick, man.
Right. Yeah, I could go either way. And I would absolutely not crucify him or even criticize him at all if he decided to opt out of a bowl game, because he is, obviously he's a guy with an NFL future. But at the same time, everyone's saying, why play in a meaningless bowl game? Why is the bowl game any less meaningless than the last 6 games have been? Because we knew Mizzou wasn't playing for anything this season. So yeah, I would say probably, like you said, it's a slightly over 50% chance that this is his last game. And he does, by the way, need, I think it's 109 194 rushing yards to pass Devin West for the all-time single-season lead. But I wouldn't be stunned if he plays in a bowl game, especially like, I mean, there's a chance they end up in Nashville or Memphis. Maybe he wants to go out in his home state and have it one last big game. Who knows?
That's a good point. So let's talk about that real quick. Have a little generational dispute about who Missouri's all-time leading rusher should be if Tyler Beatty gets 194 more yards. So I want to be clear. Devin West's school record of 1,578 yards was accomplished in 11 games. That's how many Beatty has played. He has, 1,380 or something like that. So that's it. He didn't get the record in my book. If you add Devin West's bowl game yardage, he had 1,703 in 12 games. So Tyler needs about 324 yards to break the school record. If he does that, I will fully recognize him as the record holder. Otherwise, I say he's had the second best season.
Yeah, and I mean that's fair. He's had a remarkable season anyway. You slice it. I mean, when you're talking about first and second in school history, it's very good company. And yes, if he for some reason goes for 325, just go ahead and give him the Doak Walker Award, put him on your Heisman ballot, and give him the crown of best running back in Mizzou history, because that would be quite something.
And in that 1998 season, Devin West did have a 319-yard game against Kansas. So
wow.
It was,
I mean, if Mizzou played Kansas again this year, that would not be off the table.
Fair. And that wasn't a great Kansas team.
I
think it was better than this one, but I could be incorrect on that. So somebody earlier, and I can't find it right now, but somebody was asking about possibilities for bowl destinations. Just tell me if I'm missing any here, because the truth is we have no idea. But what is possible seems to be Music City, Liberty, Texas, Birmingham, Gasparilla, and probably the Mayo Bowl. I think they could end up in any of those.
Yeah, to me that's about the list. Correct. I mean, theoretically there's a chance they could get to one of the Florida games. The what is it? It would be the Gator and the Outback. But I think that's a real long shot. I think everything would have to break their way, and those teams would have to want Missouri more than other teams that I just don't necessarily see happening. But yeah, I mean, the six you mentioned I would say be the six favorites for me for sure. And I really don't know how to handicap it. I mean, we'll have a little bit better idea after this weekend, but even then I don't know. It always cracks me up. You have a really sound postseason format for a sport when it's leaks and misinformation and reports on what the school wants and what the Bulls want to try to find out who's going where in the postseason. It's just insane to me.
Well, and that's the thing. People have to understand, it's just this group of six bowls. People would say, well, if they beat Arkansas, they got the same record and they've got a better record than Arkansas. But that doesn't matter. It matters
right.
Who has to travel the furthest, whose players want to go. Last year, we thought Missouri would probably get something better than the Music City Bowl, but they wanted the Music City Bowl. That was the one they chose. They have to submit their three in order of preference. So we don't know how many players might be yo man, I'd rather get this thing over on December 23rd than December 30th, or hey, I got more family that can watch me here.
Support of that, by the way.
Okay, excellent. Well, you can submit your request to the SEC on that, and also. Look, this is still a factor. Missouri averaged 45,000 fans a game this year. And bowls are going to see that and go, well, are people going to want to come? Because I got this other school that they averaged a lot more than 45,000 fans. And that's going to be also a factor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see. It's a crazy system. They're going to a bowl. We know that for sure. There's about one of six options, and sometime probably this time next week we'll be trying to harass sources to let us know what Mizzou wants and what the Bulls want, and try to put all the puzzle pieces together and figure out if they're going to the Gasparilla Bowl or the Birmingham Bowl or the Liberty Bowl.
and probably not quite this time, because at this time next week the SEC title game will still have to be played, and that's ultimately the determining factor on where Missouri goes. YouTuba says that Beatty is a better player than Devin West was. Well, YouTube, this is sacrilege. I might ban you from the YouTube going forward. We will not have this discussion. But Tyler Beatty's
I'll interrupt with some not really breaking news, but a quick report I just saw from Nashville that Caleb Evans is in uniform and going through warm-ups. So I can't promise he'll play. Obviously, we've seen the past few weeks that Hiron White has done that same thing, and he also is in warm-ups, or in uniform, by the way. But at least a positive sign maybe for Missouri. It'd probably be good to get him back.
I'm hoping the report was from Fayetteville and not Nashville. Caleb Evans possibly being traded for Tyon Evans before today's game.
I had bowl games on the mind. It is Fayetteville.
And we think, I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, I don't know, it appears that Daniel Parker Jr. is not going to be there. I'm so far beyond tired of trying to figure out what's happening in the world of Mizzou football based on Daniel Parker Jr.'s Twitter account, but I don't know. His tweet indicates to me he's probably not playing.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be, a total shock because he did pop up on the injury report this week listed as questionable, and we were supposed to interview him on, I think it was Tuesday, and they said he was under the weather, so it wouldn't stun me if he's not playing.
Yeah, so I think even if Evans doesn't play, the emergence of DJ Jackson, I think, was the big story to come out of last week, other than, hey, Missouri won the game on a 2-point conversion on the last play of the game.
Yeah.
Secondarily, DJ Jackson, nice little find. And even Drinkwitz, I appreciated. He's like, yeah, I didn't know he was going to be that good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, you never know what to expect. I mean, even if you see it in practice from a true freshman in a game like that, throwing him out there against, Florida's got some dudes. They've got some athletes like that. That was a tough matchup, and he played great. So yeah, you don't feel like you're not too worried if a Caleb Evans can't go, but I think certainly it wouldn't hurt to have a guy who's played in as many games as he has. And Caleb Evans has been good this year as well. So maybe then you could, rotate DJ Jackson and Allie Green at the other corner spot or something like that. But at a minimum, definitely reason to be excited about Jackson for the future.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, anything other than, hey, stop the run, hold on to the ball, the usual stuff we always say that you look at in this game?
No, not really. I mean, like I said, I think Missouri's going to need to score points. I don't think they're going to, win with 16 points in regulation like they did last week. I think this game's going to get up into the 30s at a minimum. Of course, I said last week first to 40 wins, and I was completely wrong. So you really shouldn't take my advice. But
the first to 40 would have won last week.
That's true. Yeah. So, I think we're going to need to see someone from the offense provide that, whether it's Tyler Beatty or whether it's Connor Bazelak and the receiving core that have struggled a little bit the last couple of weeks. And then, the usual stuff. I mean, turnovers will be huge, I would think. I think this is, probably a one-score game in my estimation. So, if one team wins the turnover battle, that makes a big difference. And Arkansas has actually been really good in turnover margin this year. I think they have they're tied for 5th nationally in fewest giveaways or something like that. So something to keep an eye on.
Justin Wirtz asked, is Chris Abrams-Drain the most important player for Mizzou today outside of Beatty? It's a good argument to make. I think maybe I would lean more like Trajan Jeffcoat, Isaiah McGuire. First of all, not only because they can pressure the passer, but also one of the big issues Missouri had the first 2/3 of the season was their defensive ends just doing absolutely the wrong thing on basically every running play. And I think it will be very important that on at least some of the running plays, they do the right thing today.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly understand that case, and Connor Bazelak, you could make a case the quarterback's always one of the two most important players. But I mean, Chris Abrams-Drain will play an important role, I would think, because I think he's going to spend a lot of time guarding Burks because Burks has lined up in the slot more often than not this season. Chris Abrams-Drain has lined up as the nickel more often than not this season, and he's been really good. So yeah, if for some reason you can line him up one-on-one in man coverage and have him take away Burks all game, that'd be huge. I don't know if that's realistic.
So I started kind of talking about this at the beginning of the show, and I'll let you roll after we kind of get your take on it. Who's this game bigger for? Like which team do you think this is a more important game for? And I just want to leave it open-ended there and kind of explain my reasoning on why it could be either team.
Yeah, I think you could make a case for either team. I would probably say Arkansas because, one, they haven't won this game in 5 years. I mean, that's kind of the starting point of the argument. Two, yeah, they've already had a successful season, but I think, if they got to the end of a season that has been, their best in so long and, so many fans were excited about and they had the same record as Missouri, yes, and they've absolutely played a harder schedule, by the way. But, same record Missouri and a loss head-to-head, I think that takes a little bit of the shine off, a little bit of the enthusiasm off. And I also think Arkansas is they're probably going to take a little bit of a step back. They actually had a lot of returning talent, and they brought back a lot of like 6th-year seniors, 5th-year seniors on this team. I wouldn't be surprised, especially again given the competition they play, if they do take a little bit of a step back next season. So I think for Sam Pittman and that staff to get to 8 wins would be so big, and just buying a little bit of goodwill from the fan base.
Yeah, I see the argument there, but I think I kind of come down on the other side because Arkansas has achieved its goal for the season. I mean, they have a winning season, which like 2 years ago, nobody would ever have thought in year 2 Sam Pittman could have a winning season, be going to a pretty good bowl game, all that. Now, they are playing for the difference between a pretty good season and a really good season. I think Missouri's playing for the difference between a acceptable season and a pretty good season. Because I think they've saved it. Like, they've salvaged what they can salvage. It's not a disaster, but it's still, you lose this game, it's a little bit, beat a bad Florida and South Carolina team and lost as many as we won, but hey, still got to a bowl game. So it's like incremental progress. But I think if he can win this one and win 4 out of the last 5, then that takes it from feeling decent about it to actually feeling really good about it. So I think in some ways there's more at stake for Missouri here. And also, I think the pressure's on Arkansas because they are the better team. They are a 2-touchdown favorite, and they haven't won this game since Gary Pinkel was the coach.
Right. Yeah. No, I definitely think more pressure is on Arkansas, which, I think is partially why I would say it's a little more important for them. If Missouri loses, I don't think anyone's necessarily all that upset or up in arms. But yeah, I mean, like, you can definitely make the argument either way. You can also make the argument either way that it's fairly irrelevant to the grand scheme of college football, but that's okay. That's what, it's a fun sport because we still, even if teams are eliminated from the end championship, there's still a lot of meaning in games like this.
Yeah, no question. So I don't know. It's a heavy trophy to carry all the way back to Columbia, but I'm sure that Missouri would be okay with doing it. I picked something like 33-28 this morning. I think you picked Arkansas in like a 1-score game.
Yeah, we were very similar. I really should have been more interesting and picked something I didn't believe just to give us more variety, but I had Arkansas 35-27.
Well, close enough. So Mitch will have your coverage during the game. I'll have the postgame show. He'll have all the postgame stuff while I get over to the arena tonight. So thanks for hanging out with us 12 times this year, Mitch. And it was reported you did not sound like you were calling from an underground bunker this week as it was last week. So.
Yeah, I always have some sort of audio issues, whether it's the echo or the cell reception or something. So I was glad we could end on a good note.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later on. Thanks a lot.
All right, enjoy the game.
All right, that is Mitchell Forty joining us, and he, again, will have you completely covered over on PowerMizzou.com all day. So what I want to ask you guys to do now is start putting in your predictions. We're going to hang out here about 3 to 5 more minutes leading up to the game. Start putting in your predictions. We'll put some of those up on the screen while we look at the last couple of questions. Dan wants to know, does Barry Odom leave for a group of 5 job this year or ascend to a blue blood defensive coordinator? I am fairly confident that Barry Odom is not leaving Arkansas for another defensive coordinator job. Unless it, like, somehow he got an NFL job or something. But I think if he leaves for another college job, I'm pretty confident it's a head coaching job. I think he could do worse than, Arkansas is probably going to take a little step back this year, the way Mitchell Forty was saying and Andrew Hutchinson was saying as well. So they're probably going to take a little bit of a step back, especially on defense. So it might not be a bad time for him to get out. I think that SMU's coach, Sonny Dykes, I believe, has gotten another job. So SMU is the kind of job I look at. Hey, it's a good program in a solid mid-major league. Maybe they've got a good roster. Maybe you can step in there and get things going. I don't know if Barry Odom's a Power 5 recruiter as a head coach, but I think he would do really well at that group of 5 level for 2 or 3 years and then kind of put himself back in a position to be that Power 5 guy maybe in a couple years. There are maybe some Power 5 jobs he could get after this year, but I don't think he should just take a Power 5 job because it's a Power 5 job. His next move has to be a move that's going to be good for him, because if he doesn't do well at his next Power 5 job, it's probably not going to happen again. Jacob wants to know if Mookie Cooper is playing today. He is, as far as we know, not on the injury report. Wasn't on it last week. Played 4 snaps. Let's roll through some of these predictions. The Magic Man says Arkansas 48. We don't know how many Missouri's going to have, but Arkansas with 48. Dan Doerr's going with the Razorbacks 45-27. Okay, Magic Man clarified 48-17. Does not see a close game. Stewart sees 24-17. Missouri. The other Stewart says Odom could take Billy Napier's job when he moves up somewhere at Louisiana. I agree. That would be a good spot for him to land. YouTube's going 42-25 or 42-24 Arkansas. Justin Wirtz going Arkansas 34-24. So I'm a little bit surprised the way Missouri has played the last couple weeks that we don't have more predictions for Missouri to pull the upset. Now, I didn't pick them to pull the upset either, so I'm not saying you guys are wrong. I just thought it would maybe be a little bit more optimistic. There's a little optimism. Jacob Israel going 31-17 Missouri for the prediction. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Kickoff here in 15 minutes at Razorback Stadium down in Fayetteville, Arkansas. And I just kind of want to reset everything for you guys. So Mitchell will have you covered on the site during the game. When the game ends, it usually takes me about 10 minutes to get some stats together and some graphics and things like that. And once that happens, I will jump on with the Boulevard Brewing Company post-game drink. If you guys subscribe to the channel before you leave here, you're going to get a push notification when we go live. That way, hey, it's usually about 10 minutes after the game, but there's not a set start time because we don't know when the game ends. So subscribe. You'll get a notification that we are live with the postgame show. You want to be on the beginning of the postgame show this week because regardless of when it starts, I've got to end it at about 7:30 to go cover basketball at 8 o'clock tonight. So, it could be, if the game runs long, it could be a little bit shorter postgame show. So you want to get on there, get your calls in, all that. So we hope to see all you guys there. Pocket Watch jumping in with a late prediction, and he is going 38-24. I have the graphic over. 34-28 Mizzou. Sorry about that. Jim Bob Shell picking 34-31 Mizzou. And there we go. So that seems to be all the predictions. Want to thank one more time the Call and Gentry Law Group in Jefferson City. They've been a part of this show all 12 weeks this year. We'll do it again if there's a bowl game that is right on the schedule. I'm not doing it if they're in a Christmas Day bowl game, but, I'm not doing a pregame show for like Eastern Michigan. But we'll see, depending on the bowl game. May have one more. But Call and Gentry has been here with us all year long. You can, once again, find them online at callgentry.com. You can get in touch with them at 573-691-4531. Chip, Emily, Jason, Nick, everybody down there at Call and Gentry does a fantastic job. They've helped me out with a bunch of things over the years, and definitely great customer service. They will respond to you very quickly. If they say they're going to do something, they get it done. When life is unfriendly, Call and Gentry, that's where you go down in Jefferson City, Missouri. Again, you do not have to be located in Jefferson City to use Call and Gentry, but that is where they are located. They'll come to you, and they will take care of all of your legal needs. Can't thank you guys enough for hanging out here today and all season long on our pregame show. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. And kickoff now just 12 minutes away on CBS. Mizzou and Arkansas will be back with you after the game on the Boulevard Brewing Company post-game drink. Thanks for joining us one more time in the 2021 season.